Russia and China are not allies in the sense we understand it. The alliance between Russia and China is often emphasized, but it is greatly overestimated. Russia, like China, is a strategic opponent of the West. Yes, and during the meeting between Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping in March 2023, a year after the start of the full-scale invasion, the friendship between the two states was once again emphasized. Although Russia is massively supported by China through the sales of components and machinery, these are sales, not aid shipments. And so, what was once a friendship without limits quickly became a public rebuke of Russia when China loudly warned against the use and threat of nuclear weapons. In reality, Russia and China are bitter rivals whose interests only temporarily align. But if Russia relies on China, it will be abandoned. Why this is the case will be discussed in this video. States have no friends, only interests. This quote, attributed to Charles de Gaulle, is particularly true in the relationship between Russia and China. Although Xi and Putin publicly display mutual loyalty, the Sino-Russian relationship is far from being comparable to the special relationship between the United States and the United Kingdom. While both Russia and China are dissatisfied with the current world order, neither the desired world order nor their friendship align. They are competitors pursuing common interests for now. Rejecting the West allows for short and mid-term cooperation, but this is not a stable basis for a long-term alliance. Culture, history, power imbalance, national interests, and their understanding of international politics argue against a friendship or an alliance based on solidarity. Both Russia and China are dissatisfied with the Western-dominated world order, but notable differences exist here. Russia knows that it cannot achieve its ambitious geopolitical goals within the current structures, so it wants and it needs to overthrow this world order. It is no longer the Soviet Union and has no realistic chance of being a superpower on par with the United States. China, on the other hand, wants to play a much larger role with this world order and utilize it for itself. For its trade, it needs the international order. In international organizations, where it feels respected according to its self-image, it is happy to cooperate. While Putin often speaks of a multilateral world order that Russia seeks, this is clearly not what China wants. China does not want a multilateral system. It wants a bilateral system where it and the US are the dominant forces globally, until it transforms it into a unilateral system where China becomes the center of the world once again, a position it held for most of its history. Indeed, China's strength is not exceptional, but rather a historic norm. In the year 1000, when the US did not exist for centuries, India and China accounted for 50.5% of the world's economic output. 600 years later, in 1600, after the discovery of America and during the flourishing Spanish Empire, 51.4% of the world's economic output was still distributed between China and India, with China holding 29%. Both in 1600 and 600 years earlier, China had a higher share of global economic output than the US does today. It was only under the Qing dynasty, which came to power 44 years later, that this changed, especially in the 19th century. Ruined by civil wars and then Mao's policies, China fell to less than 3% of the world's economic output. Since then, it has been slowly returning to its traditional place. China sees itself on the path to regaining a dominant role, which it views as a historical and natural right. Russia has no such chance, and the recent memory of the power of the Soviet Union leads to a feeling of having been betrayed. It has lost a position that is no longer achievable on its own without wars of conquest. Even though it might seem hard to imagine, considering I appear on YouTube in front of the whole wide world. It is extremely important for me to maintain my privacy and be left in peace. Nevertheless, I keep receiving emails and even phone calls from unknown companies. This spam happens because companies have bought my data from data brokers. And they don't just have my name and my email address. Often my birth date, my home address, and even my purchasing and browsing behavior are known. a nightmare for someone who likes to have peace outside of his work. Fortunately, there are laws that give us, as private individuals, the right to control our data. However, I have no idea which data broker has my information. Contacting them individually feels like the work of Sisyphus. This is where today's sponsor, Incogni, comes into play. You sign up, give the company permission to act on your behalf, and they get to work deleting your data. I can track the progress directly, and every time I check in, I receive confirmation of additional deleted entries. If brokers cause problems, Incogni sticks with it until my data is gone. Month by month, they continue to protect my privacy. This doesn't just reduce the amount of spam I receive. It also helps me sleep soundly, knowing that my insurance won't increase my premiums based on my browsing behavior or that someone won't take out a loan using my personal data. If you also want to reclaim your privacy, you can find the link in the description. Not only will you be supporting the channel, but you'll also get a 60% discount if you use my link. I've now got an annual subscription myself to keep my data continuously deleted. I'm also grateful that they support the channel. But let's go back to the situation report. China sees itself as the center of the world. This does not fundamentally differ from Europe, where published maps are usually centered on themselves. However, the degree of cultural superiority and especially its constancy appear exceptional and strange from a European perspective in the 21st century. For most of civilized humanity, China had a continuous high culture enabled by a productive agriculture. Before China experienced a decline in power and prestige due to internal problems, its global economic power was more comparable to that of the US at its peak, even surpassing it, not for a few decades, but for many centuries. For most of civilized human society, China had, according to calculations, a share of between 25 and 30% of the global economic output. This led China in a display of national sense of superiority over millennia. The Chinese Empire saw itself not only as the Middle Kingdom, the kingdom of the world's center, or the sole empire, but also as the only sovereign state. Its culture and civilization were understood as the only true culture and civilization, with the emperor seen as the owner of everything under the heavens and on earth, superior to all other monarchs. China was not a primus inter pares. The emperor viewed himself as supreme ruler. Meeting on equal terms seemed simply absurd given the real power differences. The kowtow, a prostration before the emperor demanded even from foreign ambassadors, became a term in most foreign languages. Whether Admiral Zhang He received tribute payments from other kingdoms as a matter of course during his travels to Africa in the 15th century, or the Chinese imperial house calling the British barbarians rebelling during the First Opium War, rebellion because they fought against the legitimate ruling house. In China, historical self-image, there is nothing on equal terms and no reason to change this conviction. Russia, on the other hand, raises itself spiritually as the savior from fascism in World War II. It is the preserver of traditional values and Orthodox Christianity. Historically, it sees itself as a constant fighter against the Romano-Germanic West and its individualism, with the leading role in the fight against the global West. This is historically justified beyond World War II and the theory of the Third Rome. After the fall of the first two Roman empires, Rome and Byzantium, the Grand Duchy of Moscow became the third and last Rome. The Russian Tsar, a variation of Caesar, was accordingly the supreme ruler, the successor of the Roman Empire with imperial claims. Historian Christine Roll wrote prophetically in 2012, Eastern Roman Empire and Russian Tsar, Byzantine heritage and Orthodox Church, continuities of imperial expansion and Soviet world dominance claims. Holy Russia and Russian messianism. This is what the memory place Third Rome is made of. The fascination of the Third Rome is also contributed to another peculiarity, one that is atypical for memory places, perhaps even unique. With the memory of the Third Rome, interpretation of the future always took place at the same time. The formulation, Moscow is the third Rome, not only explains Russia's present from its past and vice versa, but it also connects Russia's past with its future. Thus, the Third Rome always served and serves as a metaphor for perspectives of Russian historical development, and it can therefore even be used as a means against post-Soviet phantom pains. While both sides see themselves as deserved and natural leading powers, the reality is entirely different. Russia is now clearly a junior partner to China. In no way, except perhaps the number of nuclear weapons and land area, can Russia keep up with China anymore. China has 10 times the economic power, 10 times the population, and it outclasses Russia in technological innovation in almost every industrial sector. This is very problematic for the Kremlin, which sees itself from the Soviet times as the big brother of its southern neighbor. This is also seen by the countries in the traditional Russian sphere of influence. In May 2023, China held a summit for Central Asian states, attended by all heads of state in Beijing. Russia was not present. This is a traditional Russian sphere of influence. Imagine a summit for all European NATO member states held by China, where the United States are not invited, and all invited states come with their head of state. As Russia becomes a clearer junior partner to China, the urge to be respected will grow. While China sees itself on a steady, even natural path upwards, only needing to stop the Americans from halting this rise, Russia must compensate for the real power imbalance. This threatens even more risky political actions that simultaneously threaten to destroy the relationship with China. There are also historical grievances that can become problematic in an openly nationalistic China. The country is willing to use military force to enforce very far-fetched historical claims, like the Nine-Dash Line in the South China Sea. Russia has not only repeatedly interfered in Chinese internal affairs, but has also occupied parts of the country and even cut off pieces. Xinjiang was occupied multiple times, such as from 1871 to 1881 and in 1934. Russia enabled Mongolia's independence, creating a puppet state in the 20th century and forcing Mao to recognize the division of the original Chinese Mongolia into a Chinese Inner and a Mongolian Outer Mongolia. It is directly responsible for a shrinking China. However, the Treaty of Aigun in 1858 and the Convention of Peking in 1860 were much worse. China permanently lost Outer Manchuria, an area of 600,000 square kilometers, nearly twice the size of the Federal Republic of Germany. These treaties are considered part of the century of humiliation in China. Undoing them was China's greatest foreign policy goal in the first half of the 20th century. While all other unequal treaties with Japan, Russia, France, Great Britain, and the US were annulled, the two unequal treaties with Russia are still in force today. A resurgent China may feel legally bound to recognize these treaties, but for states where treaties are seen more as declarations of intent than untouchable agreements, the massively shifted power balance is a significant conflict potential. Additionally, Russia's east is sparsely populated but full of resources. China is densely populated and needs those resources. Historic claims and self-image have considerable conflict potential for both states. Russia wants to bring post-Soviet states back into its sphere of influence, be recognized as a great power, and gain economic and military influence worldwide. Its goals are greater than its capabilities, requiring radical measures that shake the existing order. China, on the other hand, wants to secure its political system long-term and regain its accustomed role in the world. While its rise is facilitated by distracting the USA, global chaos is a disaster for an export nation like China. China benefits from Russia's war with Ukraine as long as it does not escalate too much. It can use Russia's distraction to expand its influence in Central Asia and already dominates markets there. It can buy raw materials cheaply, because Russia has to sell and cannot sell much in Europe anymore. This allows China to dictate prices to some extent, creating an increasing imbalance between the two states. Economically, Russia is now dependent on China. China is by far Russia's largest trading partner. Russia is just in China's top 10 with 3.3%. It is still in both interests to pretend it is an equal partnership, but both know it no longer is. Russia is being exploited, from forced discounts on raw materials to systematic plundering of Russian technology, which has been so successful that perhaps only Russian submarine technology is left from which China can learn. Russia actively breaks the territorial integrity of another state by annexing parts of it at war. China, on the other hand, sees Taiwan as an integral part and would create a dangerous precedent if it supported Russia's aggression. Therefore, it cannot, out of self-interest, recognize Russia's conquests. While China currently benefits from an ongoing war and Russia becomes increasingly dependent on China, this creates more tensions between the two self-confident states that are competitors for spheres of influence and have territorial disputes. While it goes too far to expect a serious conflict or war between the two states anytime soon, it must be clear that Russia and China do not maintain a natural alliance based on true solidarity and friendship. The cultural and historical differences are too great. The common interests are too small for us to see a lasting alliance here. Just being against the USA is enough for a while, but not forever. Then the break between the two powers is imminent and can only be avoided if Russia comes to terms with its role as a junior partner to China. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. It really helps with the algorithm. Leave your comment. Do you agree with me, or do you see it somewhat different? Feel free to comment in the comment section. If you're new here, I would like to invite you to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss future videos. This channel is only possible because of the support of viewers like you. If you like to support the channel, you can do so by the means in the description. But that's it from me for now. Thank you for watching, and I'll be back.